Let's talk about how early administration of epinephrine can improve survival in cardiac arrest. We have some pretty good data that demonstrates that when you administer epinephrine in the way that the AHA recommends, that even though you have more survivors with epinephrine, you have less neurologically intact survival. So more people have a pulse, less people can recognize their family members. Current practice with administration of epinephrine, at least according to ACLS, is that you administer it after your first 2-minute CPR cycle and after the first rhythm check. So depending on how long the downtime was and how long it took ALS to get there, you could be pretty deep into the arrest by the time the patient gets their first epinephrine. In fact, in the Paramedic 2 trial, the average amount of time it took to get the first epinephrine into the patient was over 20 minutes. Now, a lot of experts have read between the lines on epinephrine data and have proposed that if you can get the epinephrine in as early as possible, you may see better outcomes and less rates of neurological devastation. And we've seen some evidence of this with the Salt Lake City Fire Department. They administer epinephrine intramuscularly as soon as they arrive on scene, and they saw increased rates of neurologically intact survival. Now, that practice needs to be validated by larger and more controlled data sets. This newly published paper looked at the impact of earlier administration of epinephrine in out-of-hospital cardiac arrest using cardiac arrest registries from South Korea and Singapore, totaling about 25,000 patients. Without getting too deep into the nuts and bolts of the paper, what they concluded was that earlier epinephrine was associated with improved outcomes, including improved rates of neurologically intact survival. Now, it needs to be said that both South Korea and Singapore have significantly lower rates of overall survival than the U.S. does, and it also appears that they transport most of their patients intra-arrest. But regardless of how long they stayed on scene, earlier administration of epinephrine was associated with improved outcomes. Now, let's be clear that this is not establishing that transporting intra-arrest is acceptable practice. Improved outcomes with the administration of early epinephrine when you are transporting intra-arrest is a consolation prize, not an achievement. But the conclusion does add weight to the concept that earlier administration of epinephrine in out-of-hospital cardiac arrest is better. Link to the paper in my bio or in the video description on Facebook.